Alright, welcome to Troy Draws Things. I am Troy. So in my last video I switched out my drafting table, found out I have a lot more space in the corner where that goes, and I decided that I wanted to put up a pegboard on the wall right next to it so that I would have some place to store art. So I'd have a place to store some of my art supplies. Actually, triangles and other shape templates that I have, also some tape, various other things like brushes, so many things can go on a pegboard. I've got two other pegboards in the studio right now. I've got the one right here for acrylic paints and accessories, and then I've got one on the other side of the studio behind the camera right now that has tools like drills and saws and such. So when I put those up, I painted both of those solid colors. The pegboard for the tools I painted green, and the one over here I painted black. But I decided this time, since it's going to be for art supplies, it's going to be in the studio right next to my drafting table, I didn't want to just do a simple solid color. I wanted to give it more pizzazz. So I got to thinking about it, and I thought, why don't I just paint a character on it, My first thought was Batman, but then I didn't want something so dark. So I decided I'd go with Wonder Woman. I can use more bright colors, and I think it'll pop in the room. So that is what I'm working on today. I've got my pegboard, so now I need to cover it with gesso to make sure I have a good surface for the paint to adhere to. I'm going to be painting it with acrylic paint. I've already done my sketch for what I want the drawing to look like. I'll show you a picture of that here. Alright, so let's get to it. Let's start this Wonder Woman on a pegboard. The first step here is to cover the board with gesso. This is just white gesso. Think of it like primer for when you're painting a house. It sets a base coat. Next step is to transfer the sketch that I made for the drawing onto the pegboard. Now, I'm not using any fancy techniques. I'm sure there are a lot of different ways that we could do this. You could use a projector to project everything onto the board. You could use a grid system, but for what I'm doing, I didn't have a super detailed sketch, and I didn't care that if I was exact to my original drawing. I just wanted it to be, I just wanted to use it as an idea. I'm really just trying to use the original drawing as a guide. So I'm looking at the drawing and then trying to recreate it as I go along. You'll see me occasionally look back at my drawing, fold it up, compare it to what I've done. Now, in my original drawing, I had Wonder Woman holding a sword over her face. I decided I didn't like that idea as much, so I kept the same pose and gesture, but I took the sword out and decided to just have her holding the lasso of truth rather than the sword. Alright, now you may notice I'm going real low in the painting where the design element is going to be. That's okay, because I'm going to come back over that later and paint into it. So I'd rather make sure I get all this covered well and then worry about that later. And I'm also going into the figure a little bit. But this paint is thin enough I can still see the pencil outlines. So I'm not going to have any problem finding the edges later on. I find the beginning of a painting, and I think a lot of artists will agree, the beginning of a painting and the first third of it probably is the hardest part because it just looks terrible. It just looks terrible the whole time. It looks like you have no idea what you're doing, but that's normal. It's something that every artist, every painter goes through. You know, even on a drawing, you know, the initial steps to create the figure or the drawing that you want to do look like chicken scratch. They look like you're just, you know, they look like you got no clue. But it's as you build step by step that you start to form something that actually looks like what you're trying to make. Alright, now, I think for the first time in this project, it's starting to come together. I'm actually starting to like what I'm looking at. It looks like Wonder Woman. At this point, it's kind of just working on the details, I think, now. Most of the major color sections have been put in. I want this to look more like a retro comic style and not something super modern, so it's not going to be a whole lot of gradients and everything, but I do want to show some shadow, so I'm going to go in with some low lights. I'm probably not going to put highlights anywhere, maybe a little bit, but not much, but it's mostly going to be more shadows and low lights, you know, in areas like, you know, in the thighs here, underneath the breasts, underneath the chin here, to give that some definition. And then at the end, I'm gonna come back and do black outline, I think. We'll see how it actually looks, but I think I'm gonna do that so it actually has more of a comic feel. So the creation of this took me many days, and because of that I have a lot of video and it's a lot of steps and it takes a lot of time, so I'm gonna have to split this up into 2 videos. So this is gonna be the end of this first part. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next video where I finish up this pegboard painting of Wonderwall.